Stephen Harper gave a prepared speech to the Israel parliament last year, he equated lack of support for Israel with anti-Semitism. He says here, "This is the face of the new anti-Semitism. It targets the Jewish people by targeting Israel and attempts to make the old bigotry acceptable for a new generation. Of course, criticism of Israeli government policy is not in and of itself necessarily anti-Semitic, but what else can we call criticism that selectively condemns only the Jewish state and effectively denies its right to defend itself while systematically ignoring or excusing the violence and oppression all around it? Well, we don't call it racism or anti-Semitism. This idea that Israel is the only Western state with democracy and the rule of law and therefore is justified in carrying out acts of violence is just wrong on all accounts. And with a prime minister that thinks criticizing the country of Israel puts you in the same league as Adolf Hitler, well, it's little wonder that the Harper government intends to use hate crime laws against Canadian advocacy groups that are encouraging boycotts of Israel. The targeted groups aren't your typical atheistic communist unions and student groups, although there are some of those included, but it's organizations like the United Church of Canada and the Canadian Quakers. It's all part of the zero tolerance approach towards this loose coalition called Boycott, Divest, and Sanction, or the BDS. Now, when asked about zero tolerance and what this actually meant and how it would be used and implemented, Public Safety Minister Stephen Blaney replied 4 days later with a list of Canada's updated hate laws. Now, while the Prime Minister does have direct control over what laws the RCMP should be forcing, more so than others, civil liberty groups are now pointing out that even if a prosecution is made, well, it would require assent from a provincial attorney general and would almost certainly be challenged under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And meanwhile, in Canada, both the federal Liberal and NDP oppose BDS and they support Israel without question. Now, call it another symptom of what we here at PFT are now calling the Harper Precedent. You know, you find some distinctly Harper quality of the federal government, and then watch all other prime ministers after him just pretend like it's the norm now. The American-style 24/7 political attack ad campaign is the most obvious example right now. But, you know, equating boycotts of Israel with anti-Semitic hate speech, you know, Blaney called the BDS the new face of anti-Semitism. Well, that's likely just going to be another new precedent now. And even the NDP, who didn't support Bill C-51, are marching to the Israel can do no wrong goose step. But if simply criticizing a foreign country is to be considered hate speech, then it's because the government changed the criminal code's definition of hate speech last year. Now, along with race and religion, there's now national origin. Michael Vaughan, a lawyer for the British Columbia Civil Liberties Association, says the expanded definition is clearly a tool to go after critics of Israel. Now, while the Harper government has basically vowed not to tolerate this boycott, boycotts in Canada are constitutionally protected. But at the same time, with Bill C-51 passing, well, the clampdown on dissent is certainly not unrelated. You know, while C-51 was sprouted as being a public safety issue, as apparently a necessary tool to combat terrorism, in reality, it just erodes whatever remains of the rule of law in Canada. And there's really no doubt in my mind that the provisions in C-51 are going to be used as part of this zero tolerance approach towards BDS or any other critics of Israel. I mean, every day now, this country is looking more like Stalin's Russia than this cartoonish textbook version of Canada we all received in our early state indoctrination centers. Harper's reign of terror is seeking to criminalize people who are voicing their dissent with Israel's occupied territories. And with the ongoing wars in the Middle East and the blowback that it creates and the delusion that a larger, more powerful and centralized police surveillance state is somehow the correct response to that blowback. But when viewed through these lenses, it becomes obvious where the real danger lies, and it's most certainly not with the BDS. So thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Check the links in the description for the sources to this video. And stay tuned. We got a lot more coming out very soon right here at pressfortruth.ca.